the formal program ends. And this all comes in the context of Washington really re-strategizing here in the Pacific. It was only a few months ago that the White House's Indo-Pacific coordinator, Kurt Campbell, said he expected more high-level US officials to visit the Pacific and that the US needed more diplomatic facilities here to specifically counter China's growing presence. Now, we asked Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern what she thought of Kamala Harris's appearance tomorrow this afternoon, and she explicitly said that the US presence in the Pacific had waned over recent years, but put the speech tomorrow down to the US answering a direct call from the Pacific, read Pacific-led, to have direct engagement on this, specifically because the South Pacific Tuna Treaty is up for renegotiation.
So you were actually led into the forum this morning, so what did you hear?
I will move the resolutions from the chair.
Yeah, we got an inside look before the forum was closed off to the public, and we heard from the Forum's Secretary General, Henry Puna, and he made some opening remarks, and in those remarks he said it would be remiss of him not to acknowledge the Pacific leaders, his brothers and sisters, he said, who weren't here in Fiji for this 51st PIF. He said there had been a breakdown in connection over the years, and that he hoped through existing dialogue mechanisms Micronesian countries could find value in the forum. So in that room today there was a real excitement that these Pacific leaders, after 3 years of being separated in the pandemic, could finally get back together for face-to-face talks, but also a sense of loss and grief at the fact that some of those chairs were empty.
And so what's Te Piremia Jacinda Ardern been up to?
So today we went for a drive, a 20-minute drive from where we're shooting from tonight, to a town called Nasinu. Now, in this town we toured a seed bank facility that's been conserving the region's seeds for important crops like taro, sweet potato, coconuts, bananas since the late 1990s. Now, the New Zealand government has just announced $10 million worth of funding for this seed plant, and that comes out of our $1.3 billion climate fund. It might seem like small fry out of that massive fund, but it's a 70% boost to that seed bank, so significant stuff for them, and that money will go towards new climate resilient crop varieties, research in that space.
And what's on the agenda for tomorrow?
So the program just gets busier and busier here. We obviously have Kamala Harris speaking to PIF leaders, and Jacinda Ardern has bilateral meetings with both Fiji and Solomon's prime ministers, and this all ahead of Thursday, the big day, where all of the PIF leaders will get together and have their big talks.
Thanks, Annika. Annika Smith joining us from a stunning-looking Suva this evening. It is 20 minutes to 6. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Homai Ofakaro, we would love your feedback on any
conflict of interest which has a clear legislative framework. Non-pecuniary conflicts of interest are governed by the common law rule against bias, and as far as non-financial interest goes, it fits within a category best described as a conflict of roles. In 2013, Councillor Tim Scandrett was one of 2 councillors appointed to be members of the then V-Base board. He remains the only councillor on the venue's Ototahi board. He was selected by his colleagues for his background in events management and has been able to make a valuable contribution on our behalf. On occasions, the issue of this interest or conflict of roles leads him to stepping back from this table for decisions that conflict with his role on the board. On other occasions, there is no conflict of role and he participates in making a decision, and both examples can readily come to mind. There is no question in my mind that there is not an actual conflict of interest. However, the decision we make today leads me to consider the issue of perception. Is there a perceived conflict? In this case, Venues Ototahi, as the ultimate operator of Te Kaha, has been integrally involved in the preliminary design process that has brought us to consider the D&C contract today. The perception that this role is in conflict with the decision we need to make today outweighs the absolute confidence that I have in Councillor Tim Scandrett's ability to meet his obligations around the table. Perception rules. Councillor Scandrett will not participate in the debate or the decision today. And if you'd like to step back from the table, I'll invite you to do so. I do want to comment more generally on the perception of bias or predetermination, which asks us to each consider whether we are seen to be bringing an impartial mind to today's decision. I have said councillors need to come to the table having absorbed all the relevant information with an open mind, which, as I've also said, is not an empty mind. It is natural to expect that we will bring our own experience and knowledge to the decision-making process, and it's true we may have had views about the matter before we have had the opportunity to consider all the relevant information. I say this because I'm aware that there has been a lot of public commentary about predetermination based on councillors' posts on social media prior to receiving the information we have in front of us today. When I ask each councillor to reflect on this question, I'm not saying that any of you are prevented from discussing issues and exchanging ideas with members of the public. In fact, that's to be encouraged. Nor are you prevented from promoting a particular view during debate around the meeting table today. We are not prevented from advocating opinions in public so long as we haven't indicated that we have already closed our minds before we even received all the relevant information. We are responsible for making decisions in the interests of the people and communities of this district, as I said, Christchurch City and Banks Peninsula. I actually haven't looked at individual councillors' social media posts. Life's too short. I know you have all been well advised of your obligations in this regard, and that the responsibility lies with each and every one of you personally. What I will say is this: I certainly wouldn't want to be the one that sees the council's decision today referred to a higher authority. So on that note, are there any additional declarations of interest? There appear to be none. So now I will move on to deputations by appointment and invite Peter Morrison from Hospitality New Zealand to come forward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is Nikki Rogers, our Regional Manager too. So it's a dual act. Nikki will start and I will finish for you.
Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Hospitality New Zealand, the Canterbury branch, we'd like to start by just saying the Greater Canterbury area, we represent 510 members. All are fully supportive of our stance. We're here to advocate for the going forward at top speed, the 30,000 permanent seat high-spec stadium with concourse to enable us to attract and confirm international music and sports events and tournaments. This will certainly help cement Christchurch as a desirable place to live and consequently attract more businesses to base themselves here and more residents to live. This obviously means more ratepayers, and this helps offset the increased cost of the additional 150 million. This, in addition to the extra revenue these larger events will generate for the local economy. Councillors, we entirely sympathise that you are asked to now make a further decision. You now have more facts around the 150 million price difference and that it can be met. I want you to remember that your own Christchurch International Airport, that is a vital asset in your Christchurch Holdings company. It relies on getting more persons through its gates. You also own Littleton Port, that is forward-thinking, allowing for bigger ships. You and Otakaro have spent billions to revitalise our city. You both have given us the following first-class facilities: Margaret Mayhew Playground, Tauranga, our public library, Tipai Convention Centre, which is now open and booming, Parakori Recreation Sports Centre, opening at the end of this year, Hagley Cricket Oval, all first class and future-proofed for the city's next 50 to 80 years. In August, Hospitality New Zealand will sponsor the Grand National Hurdles at Riccarton Racecourse. They have just heavily invested tens of millions in an all-weather track for the South Island, again, future-proofed. Sadly, there appears to be little vision in this whole country when it comes to government and councils. They are reactionary, not progressive in their thinking. Sure, it costs money when it comes to building for the future, but remember, it will never get any cheaper than it is today. Councillors, these are exceptional times and demands exceptional leadership by you all. This is your chance to leave a legacy for the city. Do it once, do it right. Vote yes for today.
Thank you. I've got a bit of technology here, just a minute. I'm not good at it.
So luxurious.
Oh, we don't need
so
that bit.
decadent. Indulge in all new cuppity yogurt.
Bit of, here we go. Imagine there's a stadium. It's easy if you try. No empty land wasted. Above us only a roof. Imagine all your people living for today. And then you can all go da 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 da. Imagine there's no politics. I wonder if you can. No need for businesses to plunder. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all your people sharing this with the world. You may say we are dreamers, but we're not the only ones. 27,000. I hope today that you'll join us and the city will move on as one. There you go. Any questions?
Our chief executive.
My apologies to the late John Lennon.
Our chief executive has had thousands, well, not thousands, 33 years in local government, and that was a first, and it's certainly the first karaoke submission. So thank you very much for appearing in front of us today. Certainly very effective. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
The next is William Stewart.
Sure. Hopefully the mic's going to work. Not expecting to be very popular today. I'll get straight into it. So New Zealand has a strong history as a sporting country. This dates back to a time where that was the main leisure activity. And, you know, coming from the 90s myself, our entertainment choices were 3 channels on TV. And if you were rich, you had a VCR. Or you could go outside and do something with people. We now live in a world where there is the internet. There are video games, there are online streaming video, there is social media. No longer are we restricted to 3 channels on TV. We can literally access anything, anytime in the palm of our hands. That obviously results in a change in the way that we spend our free time. Past performance is not a measure of future results. There are many trend lines that show a decrease in sporting as the main leisure activity. I only have 3 minutes. I won't go into it too deeply. I'm sure that many people have looked at this. These are just a few. Rugby, the national pastime in New Zealand, has falling participation rates, the next generation of players, and it's not just the players. Stadiums across the country and across the world face falling attendance even before the pandemic. And with the possibility of future pandemics on the horizon, that could only grow greater. With so many other activities on offer, we need to understand that it's natural that stadiums will face a reduction in use and in need. Future generations will continue, if not accelerate, this decline. There are many things that would bring the city greater economical benefit and better people's lives and build for the future than a $700 million facility that caters towards the needs of the past and the wants of a few and condemns the future to follow. I'm not saying we shouldn't fund sporting facilities, but I don't think we should fund it to this scale. I think that spending some money on improving the existing facilities would be a far better use of funds. And I think that we need to think about, in the concept of the current stadium costing us $1 million a year compared to $700 million for the stadium, are we going to get 700 years of use out of this facility? Thank you.
You just one question, because you raised Gen Z, was it? Gen Y and Gen Z, their trajectory on esports is quite different from what you've just shown there. Do you have any knowledge about that?
Most of the data I've looked up in the time I've been looking at this presentation does show a decline from the 1980s. And my concern is that a lot of people making submissions are tracked into that way of thinking. And I'm not, trying to throw stones at anyone, but if you come from a generation where sports was a huge part of your life, and then you're going to be thinking that's the way forward.
I'm thinking esports, where you get 30,000 come to a stadium and millions online.
Definitely, but we're not going to necessarily have that event happening in Christchurch very often. And the other thing I didn't even mention is that with the Dunedin Stadium, if Christchurch goes and builds a new stadium, we're going to be taking away revenue and use from that, and we're going to be fighting with them.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. We've got Crusaders and Canterbury Rugby together.
Kia ora. I'm Grant Gerald, Chairman of Crusaders, also Director of Canterbury Rugby Union. Colin Mansbridge beside me, CEO of Crusaders, and Tony Smale, CEO of Canterbury Rugby Football Union. But two of us will be addressing you today. So tēnā koutou, Your Worship, the Mayor, councillors and CCC staff, thank you for allowing us to present to you this morning. Today, Council has the privilege to be able to approve the go-ahead on the construction of Ōtautahi's multi-use arena to Kaha. The name in itself, to me, says it all. Be strong. Crusaders understands how momentous a decision this is for Council. As the Mayor has said, and even earlier today, on many occasions, decisions like this are never straightforward, financially or socially. Cost escalation was always going to be a risk when the project commenced. No one foresaw the severity of the ongoing impact of COVID, Ukraine, other inflationary pressures. In fact, in the past 10 years, inflation has counted at 25%, which essentially is 130 million of 683 million for the cost of the multi-use arena. While options have been offered to Council to consider, naturally, and in the interests of our fans and supporters and those of other sports and major events and the community at large who support events, we're urging the Council to adopt the option to proceed with the multi-use arena. Stop altogether after all that has happened and the investment being made to date seems unrealistic, as does pause and reevaluate. There are several reasons we urge Council to affirm continuation of the project. Today, Council can make a decision to complement Te Pai and Parakori, the Metro Sports Facility and the Convention Centre, and make Ōtautahi whole again. While Council's ownership of this project only stems from 2019, the concept of a multi-use arena has been around for a decade. For that whole time, we have all tried and hoped to continue to see this project foster for the benefit of our city, befitting Otautahi status as number 2 city in New Zealand. Both council and government's commitment to push on to complete the anchor projects has inspired businesses to remain committed to the city. Those businesses include us at Crusaders. In December 2019, Council approved, and in March 20, Cabinet endorsed Council's ownership of the project to construct the multi-use arena. Council has engaged a world-leading designer to design the arena, not just a sports stadium, but a multi-use arena. $683 million for a venue capable of hosting events all year round, designed specifically for multi-use and more than 200 events per year in mind, is likely to provide exceptional community value for decades to come, with massive economic and social payback. For a decade, Crusaders, noting now we have a new professional women's rugby team, Matatu, have held off looking for a rugby-only solution because we have appreciated the need to be part of the multi-use arena project. For Crusaders to survive, continue to beat our competitors and aim to be even better for our fans in the long term, we would benefit from being able to play Super Rugby and possible other international club competitions at the multi-use arena, and will pay our fair share to do so, as we have always done. We don't represent New Zealand rugby, but we can speak to the incredible desire we know our fans will have to see the All Blacks and Black Ferns playing in Christchurch more regularly. Finally, we believe the Kautui Consortium have extracted as much uncertainty as is practical in the environment with a fixed price contract. Around 8 out of the 10 people who responded to the consultation urged or sought council to proceed. My last point, when a number of us were invited by the Mayor to walk through the old Lancaster Park a few years ago pre-demolition, when a possible repair was touted, it wasn't the broken steel and the concrete that we all looked at. It was the fading memories of events that we and so many generations of people in this city have enjoyed that were being lost to the current generation that really hurt us. It was sad because the current generation was to miss out. As the leaders in our community, I'm sure we all felt, as I did then, that it's our obligation to do whatever we can to replace what we had so the next generations can experience the creation of special memories. We urge Council to proceed and entrust that you make the right decision to do so today that will enable Otautahi for generations to come to prosper. Kia kaha, ngā mihi nui, kia ora koutou, katoa. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tony Smale, Canterbury Rugby CEO, and with me today is Fiona Smith, our Community Rugby Manager. Thank you for the opportunity to present on Canterbury Rugby support for a Canterbury multi-use arena, something I'm proud to do on behalf of our organisation's 15,000 playing members and 6,000 volunteers, all in the community game. We're aware Canterbury Rugby, or as you're aware, Canterbury Rugby encouraged all its members to exercise a vote when submissions opened, and we also encourage other significant sports to reach out to their members to have a voice. Not with a message on how to vote, simply that they should express their view on such an important Canterbury decision. We are supportive that it's a multi-use arena, have held that position since Canterbury Rugby were engaged around 2 years ago in the Stakeholder Consultation Group and Arena Design Working Group. We've been included alongside other sports like football and rugby league in any design requirements and see multi-user groups accessing the facility when it's built. The opportunity of what the multi-use arena will bring to the City of Christchurch is where the excitement actually kicks in for Canterbury Rugby's members. And there are 2 phases in a new multi-use arena, the sporting and the cultural. Phase 1 is world-class facilities to encourage national and international sports teams to our city. I can mainly present rugby examples of what we have at the moment. Women's rugby is compromised at our existing venue with only 2 changing rooms. Most venues can accommodate 4. Our Canterbury women's team will play twice this year at the stadium, once before the Black Ferns, once before our men's teams. Both occasions they'll have to leave after the game to have shower and change. Staggering after 10 years, we can't provide those facilities. Christchurch hosted matches with the World Cup for Women of Cricket at Hagley Oval, and Christchurch wasn't selected to host any games in the World Cup of Rugby being played this year, and will only be a training venue, no games for the World Cup Women's Football. That's the effect our current stadium has, isn't truly fit for international, can't deal with female sports, and the city's losing the opportunity of major events. Phase 2 of the arena is what most citizens want. It's genuinely exciting. We need to re-establish our cultural wellbeing heart in Christchurch. The city needs a firm heart, and the last of the 5 anchor projects is that a Canterbury multi-use arena. 5 anchor projects were envisaged in a reborn city as they all complete each other. I referenced Lancaster Park, the concerts, the sports events, the cultural events. Who is hosting those memories that are coming from the present stadium? The Mayor herself, in reopening Lancaster Park a few weeks ago back to community, spoke of the experience and memories etched in her life. I moved a young family 20 years ago here to Christchurch, and a major factor was the international experiences, lost after 10 years. Before living here, I travelled 8 hours in a car for weekends to see Tina Turner, U2 and major concerts. It was pretty awesome. Everyone from the South Island will come here. That's what happened. Most people in Christchurch have those memories, and a major venue draws people from all over, and one with a roof is a major draw card for promoters. We've been missing events for 10 years that shape people's lives. Been a generation already that have missed out. Our city, our province, our children and their children deserve a multi-use arena with a roof that puts Canterbury back on the map. Wish you well in your decision today. The submission voters have signalled a strong intent, and from Canterbury Rugby we only see one outcome, but to support the build of a multi-use arena starting tomorrow. It's been 10 or 11 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your submission or deputation. The next one is Helen Broughton, who's online.
Thank you. Am I there, Leanne, or not?
Yes, you are.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I have 3 minutes. I came in because I was involved with the cost sharing agreement in 2013. I was there on the final day when it was signed, and I recall being in the Mayor's Lounge with Mayor Bob Parker, Ian Thompson as a senior lawyer, and Tony Marriott, the CE. So we were involved in the detail of the cost sharing agreement. But I do want to stress that when it came to council the previous week, some people were anxious about the stadium, and we were told very clearly by central government, who at that stage had more control over the city than they have now. We were told very clearly that we took all the anchor projects. We couldn't pick and choose. So I think it's really important today to recognise that. There was 2.9 billion from central government, 1.96 billion from council, and we actually took all those projects on and signed that agreement. And I do think we have to live with that agreement. I think you've done some updating in 2019, but from what I read, it's much the same for the stadium. The second point I want to make, that any costing we had at that time would have been the best estimate of costings. There was no detailed design. So it's not surprising that there's an extra 500 million, which you have approved, to go onto the actual cost, because you've done a detailed design. So you're left now with an extra, I thought it was 100 million, and it could be 150 million. I just think you need to bite the bullet and do this. If it had been done earlier as planned, you mightn't have that extra 150 million, but it was moved out to the 2015-2025 long-term plan. And I think everyone who's doing construction now has costs. So how do you do this? I am very strong on the fact that it should be a targeted rate, and I think it should be a targeted rate across neighbouring councils. I have checked with ECAN, and ECAN can legally do a targeted rate. There's no legal barrier. I'm not sure that they would get support for that, but it can be done. And I think that 115 million needs to be a targeted rate across Canterbury if you can achieve that. Thank you.
Look, thank you very much, and you've just come in within the time that's been allocated. Much appreciated. Glad to hear
Thank you.
that you were there. You were in the
Thank
room
you.
when it,
Yes,
you were in the room when
room
it happened.
at the time.
Okay, thank you very much. The next submission is Josiah Tualama Liti. Sorry. Thank you.
Malo lava, Madam Mayor and councillors, it's great to see you all. And as you consider the further funding of the stadium today, I know I've emailed you, so you've got that in our community submissions over the last little while, but we would just ask that collectively you'd make a recommendation that resources the Pacific community participation in any future option. And can I please mihi to Nigel Cox, one of our Pacific community members who's been involved and is helping with this process. But I feel like it's been a challenge for Nigel to be able to do all that he'd want to do because of some of the resource challenges that he experiences. And just to be clear, we haven't talked about that. That's just my personal observation. On October 23rd, 1969, Trinity Congregational and St. Paul's Trinity Presbyterian Churches merged, and with the Pacific Island Church congregation took up that site on the corner of Cashel and Madras, a very important Pacific site. This became our Pacific Village here in the city. It was our important engagement with the council, and it was where our dances, our community celebrations took place, our fundraisers so that our community could participate in national experiences. It's where we shared our grief at some of the losses of our mātua, and some of the mātua we acknowledge there, I'd just like to name in this conversation, Mama Tafunga of the Cook Islands community and Reverend Lapana Whaletolu. This land for us is tapu, and this has continued right through until post-quake, as a Pacific wellbeing hub, which obviously during the earthquake period we couldn't access because because of the cordons. But even though the church buildings and the building itself ended up being closed, the community hall has been that place of connection for the community up until the last service and the last community events on February 4th, 2018. And Aotearoa, as we know, is a Pacific country. It's great to see the Prime Minister and the country at the Pacific Islands Forum trying to help deepen our relationship and our whanaungatanga in the Pacific. This is the second largest Pacific city in Aotearoa. And if this goes ahead today in whatever form, this is going to be on a site of Pacific connection. And also the congregation that formed became a multicultural congregation. It's almost on the cusp of 50 years of occupation and sharing of that site. So I think, and I take the comment from the Crusaders, fading generations of memories, and that's at risk on this site too. So please, whatever decisions you do make, can you make a recommendation that the resources that haven't been there, and I know there's been support from this level, but there's some things have gotten stuck. Can you please help enable our aspirations for the design and the use and the long-term effect of this, and please help be a guardian that our community stories don't get lost in this place, and that can then be a connection for the Pacific region and for the world. Tofte.
Thank you so much for that. And I just think I think you mentioned that the kinds of Pacifica events that could be held there that then wouldn't be weather dependent. Do you want to just reflect on that for a minute?
Yeah, sure. One of the most significant events that takes place in the city is our Polyfest. It's been great, and thank you all for those of you who come. And that's been hosted in the east, in the Red Zone land, which has been a great activation of that space. But one of the aspirations I've had for a long time is that in the heart of our city, that our community would be participating and activating the central city. And as a site with this significance, that could be an important use. There's also our community markets, our Pacific League series, which is run in Hunhei, that that communities probably wouldn't want to relinquish some of those things, but there is opportunities that with this whakapapa of this site, if honoured, there's flow-on benefit and belongingness implications.
That's great. Look, thank you very much for your presentation this morning. It's very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And the last of the submissions is the Central City Business Association. Oh, Annabelle. Hello.
Good morning, everyone. The Central City Business Association strongly believe that the council should proceed with Te Kaha in accordance with the scope agreed back in August last year. It's time for the council and the councillors to show leadership, be decisive and aspirational, and recommit to Kaha without further delays. It would be a world-class facility of which the city and the region would be very proud of. It would complete the city and it would truly make Christchurch a city that shows that it loves art, it loves sport, and it means that the city is a world-class city for generations to come. We are the second biggest city in New Zealand, and we are the biggest city in the South Island. Without the completed multi-use arena, it would mean missed opportunities for the city, and the region will be left behind. Events and concerts will just go elsewhere. Canterburyans won't be able to attend events and concerts in their own city. And it would mean that we would be able to have a large number of visitors in our city and our region. The multi-use arena has been promised to the people and the businesses of Christchurch. Christchurch landowners have invested in developments. International, national and local businesses have committed to the central city with the promise of a multi-use arena. Te Kaha would give landowners, funders, prospective tenants confidence to commit to the central city. The council would further benefit with private development. Those vacant and derelict sites will be developed, and development will increase the rateable value of properties, resulting in an increase in the council's annual rates. It is necessary for supporting long-term economic prosperity of Christchurch during the construction and once completed. The facility is going to create jobs. It's going to support economic activity in Christchurch and in Canterbury. There is no cheaper time to build Te Kaha than now. And there is government funding in place to support the cost of the project. We strongly believe that the only viable option for the council is to proceed with the project as approved back in August last year. The people have spoken, with over 12 times as many people submitting on Te Kaha compared to the $10 billion long-term plan. The numbers are there. The options to pause and re-evaluate the stadium or to stop it are not viable options. So on behalf of the members of the Central City Business Association, my staff, my customers, my children and the future generation of Cantabrians, we urge you to show your decisiveness, to show ambition for the future of Christchurch, and to accept the cost increase now that you've secured a fixed price and deliver us a fit-for-purpose, world-class facility that will benefit Christchurch, Canterbury, and the future generations of Cantabrians. To make any other decision including deferring the decision until after the local body elections, would put the project at risk. It would put the future of Christchurch at risk. We need a world-class stadium for our world-class city.
Oh, I was just supporting. I can speak.
Hand holding.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm just going to walk through the decisions that need to be made today and some background. And Barry Bragg, the chair of Te Kaha board, is with me because the primary advice is coming from Te Kaha board as well as some staff.
Morena.
So just to reiterate, the decisions that you're being asked to make today are first to receive the report containing the information, and then the recommendations from Te Kaha board. Those recommendations are to improve the overall total budget cost for Te Kaha to 683,165,830, and noting that this is the total budget cost. So it includes the DNC contract price and also the other costs associated with the project. So it's not the DNC contract, it's the total budget price. Noting also, and when Barry speaks to this later, he'll be able to outline this, but it also includes contingency. Then the other recommendations follow on from that, which is about appointing B6 WATPAC delegating authority to the CE, the Chair and Deputy Chair of Finance and Performance, to sign off that contract, and then approve delegations and acknowledge and confirmation from the Crown via the Treasury, read the project assurance point. So the key recommendations, they were in the supplementary paper attachment B. Your decisions today are being based on community views. So those are the community views that you received via the consultation. They're also reflected in the community views that you've received on other occasions, investment case, the petition, and then other views that you have heard from the community about different aspects of this. It is also based on the advice from the Te Kaha board, from independent legal advice, from advice around risk insurance, from considerations of the financial impact, and also from other considerations you'll have to make. For example, things such as opportunity costs, sustainability, other issues. So those are all the things that your decisions will be based on today. Just want to touch, and I won't go through this clearly, but just to clarify some misunderstanding that's been circulating around in the media. Council took on the responsibility for this project in March 2020. On taking on responsibility for that project, there were two things. Tony Smell acknowledged one of them. We engaged and brought in key partners into this project, and we actually thank them for their involvement in since then in the project. But also, Council appointed a project board to lead the project. In July last year, there was the first indication of an increase in costs coming through, June. In July, you made a decision to try and contain those costs by reducing the seat numbers. But in August, and that was based on a lot of community feedback and advice around economic benefits, you decided to increase and return that seat number to the number that was in the investment case. At the time of making that decision, the report and the advice that was in the public arena, so it was known to the public as well as the council, there were risks associated and cost pressures and a lot of unknowns because of the global situation. I won't read through those, but quite detail about the risks that were associated in terms of price increases, resulting from COVID and other international issues, and also around unknown risks. So they were known at the time, and since then the chair of the board in the briefings has advised you of those pressures coming on and which risks were going to be realised. So that since December in particular, there have been warnings from the board around those price increases. It wasn't though until May that the full quantum of that was realised when the submission came in on the DNC contract. And then at that point, Council was received legal advice that it should seek community views before making a increase in the budget. And that is, I know you as councillors know that this is a requirement that you have under the Act, but sometimes members of the public don't know this, that council decisions are bound by the Local Government Act and other bits of legislation. That legislation says that a local authority must consider in the course of decision making the views and preferences of people likely to be affected and with an interest in the matter. And so that's why you went out to consultation and instructed staff to proceed with that. That consultation started on the 10th of June and went through to the 5th of July. We went out with 3 options, and you'll get a report on the outcome of that consultation. You were briefed about it the other day. It's been in the paper, but we will also have another briefing from the research team from council who did that analysis. So it was done from people that were experienced in analysing that quantum of feedback, but completely neutral as well. In tandem to that consultation, Te Kaha board continued to negotiate with B6 WAPAC and undertake due diligence around both the contract and the costings. And you will be hearing from Te Kaha around that and the details of that today. Also, at the same time, work was done around financial modelling, and again, you'll be hearing about that, and we'll have papers around that, around what the impact that would have on rates and headroom, and also modelling around at which stage in now this new submission costs would be incurred and when the money would flow through, and that is reflected in the modelling that's been done by the CFO. Also, just that you're aware is that council staff and Te Kaha have also responded to a range of information requests. When I say a range, an overwhelming range of information requests that have come in both from the media and from councillors. So councillors have actually done a lot of due diligence around this as well. So as well as the information that you have had in reports, you have sought further advice, and so just that also the public are aware and you're aware there's been a lot of due diligence done by councillors around this, seeking further advice, further clarity and what have you. And also we do want to even acknowledge the media who have actually made sure the public are aware of this, and through seeking the amount of information they have sought from us, which we are grateful for. Because that has meant that the public are informed about the decisions that are being made and are well aware of what's going on. So it has certainly been well traversed, and there's been a lot of due diligence around that. Today we will walk through and give you another chance to reconsider that information that you have received and ask further questions. So what we will walk through today is the consultation report from our research analyst or research team. We will then Te Kaha board and staff and Venues o Tatahi will be able to walk through and provide information around their report and their recommendations and give some further information. And then we also have the independent insurance manager, who is the insurance manager for Treasury, as well as the board and council, will be available to answer any questions or clarify anything further to what was briefed to you on Tuesday. And we also have the independent legal advice from Simpson Grierson. And then also move on to the CFO giving advice around the financial implications. We've outlined that in detail just again to give you and the public confidence that this work has been checked and the councillors have done their due diligence and actually relied on multiple sources of information before you make your decision, and you have verified the information and got external experts and advisors to verify this information so that you can have confidence in making whatever decision you come to today. So that's it.
Thank you very much. That's a very good introduction overview of how the day will proceed. So thank you very much. And I'd now like to invite the consultation presentation, Amy Martin, Ashley Hamilton and Chris Jamieson.
Good morning.
Morning.
So what we're going to do now is run you through a summary of what we heard from submitters over the consultation period. We'll start with a bit of demographic information around who we heard from, some breakdown of the results by demographic, and then we'll move into some of the more thematic analysis. Great, so who did we hear from? So the submission timeline, consultation opened on the 10th of June, and we saw an influx of submitters upon opening of consultation. This petered off towards the middle of the consultation and then picked up again towards the end, closing on the 5th of July. So we had a total of 30,575 submissions. Submitters were required to provide their first and last name, an email address or phone number, and their residential address when making their submission. Where these details were not provided, a submission has been deemed invalid and has not been included in the final analysis. Where multiple submissions from an individual were identified, any additional feedback was merged into the first submission received from that submitter, and the additional submissions were removed. Multiple submissions on behalf of a business or organisation were treated the same way. Where submitters own multiple properties and had made submissions on behalf of each property, they were also merged into a single submission for analysis and reporting purposes. Where submitters provided more than one submission with different points of view, they were contacted and asked which one they would like included, and any other submissions were removed. So that meant that 501 submissions were removed, 87 were invalid, and that left us with a total of 29,987 submissions. So looking at the demographic breakdowns of the submitters, we heard from around 6% of under 25-year-olds. This group was underrepresented compared to the city population. Those submitters aged between 25 and 79 years old were overrepresented, and over 80-year-olds were slightly underrepresented. Looking at the gender, we have 58% who identified as a male, 39% who identified as a woman, and 0.5% who identified as non-binary or another gender. Looking at the ethnicities, 88% were New Zealand European, 5.7% were Māori, and 1.1% were Pacific peoples. So in terms of the geographic breakdown, there's a big table on the left there which you can't see very well in the slide, but it's in the full report. It's just showing that around 87% of submitters were from Christchurch City, 7 were from Selwyn District,
4 from Waimakariri, and then under 1% for the other TAs across Canterbury and the rest of the areas that we heard from. In terms of the ward split, it was actually a pretty good range across the city. There was some who were slightly underrepresented, some who were slightly over, but nothing dramatically different to those city splits. So moving on now to what submitters want us to do.
Great. So overall, 77% of submitters would like to see us invest up to an additional 150 million to enable the project to go ahead as planned. 15% would like the project to stop altogether, and 8% would like to see us pause and reevaluate the project. Submitters from Selwyn and Waimak tended to be more supportive of investing up to an additional 150 million. Strong support from other territorial authorities across Canterbury region and the rest of New Zealand to invest up to an additional 150 million. Submitters from Christchurch City tended to be slightly more in favour of stopping the project or pausing and reevaluating than submitters from the wider Canterbury region and other areas of New Zealand.
And the Christchurch number is just slightly under the number for all submitters at 75%. So this is a bit of a ward breakdown of the results. We've given you an indication in the table as to whether the results were above the city result, below the city result, or around the same. Submitters from the Central, Coastal, Hallswell, Hornby, Riccarton and Waimari wards tended to mirror the citywide results. Those from Burwood, Fendleton, Harewood, Innis and Papanui tended to be more supportive of the whole sample of investing up to an additional 150 million. Submitters from Banks Peninsula, Cashmere, Heathcote, Linwood and Spraydon wards tended to be the least supportive of investing the up to an additional 150 million. It's worth noting as well that less than half of the submitters from Banks Peninsula think that we should invest that additional money. So Banks Peninsula was significantly below the city result.
So looking at the demographic breakdowns of the submissions we received and the results. So submitters under the age of 24 years and aged between 35 to 49 were more likely to say that we should invest up to an additional 150 million. Beyond here, support tends to decrease with age. Submitters aged between 65 and 79 years and over 80 years were more likely to say that we should stop the project altogether or pause and reevaluate the project. Submitters who identified their gender as male were more likely to say that we should invest up to an additional 150 million. Submitters who identified as female or non-binary were more likely than males to say that we should stop the project altogether or pause and reevaluate the project. So the ethnicity breakdowns. Submitters who identified their ethnicity as New Zealand, European, Maori and Pacific peoples tended to be more supportive of investing up to an additional 150 million to allow the project to continue as planned. Those who identified their ethnicity as Asian, Mila, other European and other were more likely than other ethnic groups to say that we should stop the project altogether or pause and reevaluate the project. Looking at the organisations now. So the majority of organisations at 86% tended to support investing up to an additional 150 million. Positions were particularly prevalent among organisations in the construction, hospitality, events and entertainment, investment and property developers, retail and sports categories. The interest, lobby, industry and community groups tended to have more of a mixed view, and submissions from political organisations and groups fell into the pause and stop categories.
So now we're going to move into some of the thematic analysis which we do from the comments provided by submitters. A bit of context, we did some pre-sorting of these with how we designed the forms. So submitters were sent to essentially 3 versions of the same question to help us pre-filter them. And from there, we're able to apply thematic coding to them and provide you with this analysis. So First up, the people who would like to invest up to $150 million to enable the project to continue. It's probably not surprising that one of the big themes here was just get on with it. Just get on and build it without any further delays. There was a feeling from them that further delays will end up costing us more and it isn't going to get any less expensive to build. We're New Zealand's second largest city and we need a world-class arena. There was a sense from these submitters that residents deserve this after the earthquakes and the other disruptive events that have happened in Christchurch over the last decade. They're fed up with missing out on large events because of the shortcomings of the temporary stadium at Addington and the unpleasant experience that provides for spectators. Some have just simply stopped attending events at the Addington Stadium because of the current experience. And they believe that it would help attract people to live and stay in Christchurch, would bring employment and vibrancy to the city, and in some cases bring global exposure to Christchurch. They did talk about the financial impacts and funding options. Some recognised that the covered arena would come at a significant cost to the city, but thought that we should proceed and get on with it regardless. Those who addressed the rates impact were prepared to shoulder an increase in rates in order to fund the additional costs, if that's what it takes to get the facility built. But they did provide suggestions on how we could help mitigate the costs, which included selling naming rights, asset sales, ticket surcharges, funding campaigns, and other sponsorship opportunities. Some thought that the government should be approached for a larger contribution, while others suggested that perhaps some sporting bodies could contribute towards the build. There were suggestions about either deferring or diverting money from other projects and purposes, including cycleways and the cathedral. And there was a feeling from these submitters that the facility will be a regional asset, not just an asset for Christchurch, and that they would like to see a contribution from neighbouring TAs who will also benefit, and potentially the wider Canterbury as well. In terms of the benefits that these submitters talked about, they're sick of having to travel to other cities for events and would prefer to spend their money locally, which they can't do at the moment. They feel that it will bring employment opportunities and vibrancy to the city, as I mentioned before, and benefits for many local businesses. They feel we're currently missing out on the economic and social benefits that a facility such as the arena would bring to the city. And there's a sense from some that it will pay for itself over the long term, particularly given the economic and social benefits, which they feel outweigh any long-term debt burden. There's a sense from them we should accept the costs of the project as we do with other council facilities, which are not expected to make a profit, and the key example there was swimming pools and libraries. And some younger submitters pointed out that the arena would be a reason for them and their peers to stay in the city and could be a draw card for others to move here. And again, just that a small number pointed out that the arena will likely bring international exposure for the city. Moving on to the submitters who wanted the project to stop altogether. Again, probably unsurprising that the key reason was the financial impacts. They were concerned about what this would mean and feel that the cost and debt burden associated with the project is just too high to justify. There are questions whether a period of financial and economic uncertainty like the one we're in now was the right time to be embarking on such a large capital project. There was concerns around the impacts on low-income households and that they would likely be hit the hardest by the financial impacts around rates, but attending events at the arena would largely be out of reach for these groups as well. And there were concerns that this would not be the last cost blowout that we see for this project. Some of these submitters said that they just thought the project was a waste of money and the city will end up with a white elephant that sits idle and empty for a lot of time. And there were concerns that it doesn't stack up in terms of return on investment and cost-benefit ratios, with some suggesting that if it was put through a rigorous cost-benefit analysis, the project would not survive the process. There was some feedback around priorities from the STOP submitters. A sense that for many this project isn't a priority and there are other issues, challenges and needs that should be addressed first. The key areas brought up were the basics, things like transport, water infrastructure, community wellbeing projects, health, education, housing. They expressed concerns at some of the ideas that have been floated to help fund the additional investment that will be required, and generally they didn't want to see us selling assets or diverting or deferring funds from other projects to enable this. Some had concerns around the climate change and environmental impacts that the project would have, and there was some comments that perhaps it's incompatible with our climate change goals and commitments. And although it was highlighted as not really being a feasible option in the consultation information, there was still some comments from these submitters that they would like to see us explore upgrading the current Orange Theory Stadium. They also commented on attendance, capacity and location. So there was concerns from these submitters about our ability to regularly fill an arena of 30,000 seats to full capacity, and they noted already declining attendance at events, which they consider as likely to continue as people adjust to new ways of living and consuming entertainment. Some feel that we will struggle to attract major events even with a stadium of 30,000 people, 30,000 seats, and that there's still a need for us to compete for these events. So is there any value in building an arena that, for the sake of a few events each year? There was some acknowledgement that the city does need a new arena from these submitters, but just not the one that we have planned currently. They want us to revisit the overarching purpose and what the city really needs as opposed to the arena that we're building in light of public pressure. They had concerns around the central city location being potentially not the most appropriate place for this development. They were worried that the structure would be dominant and overbearing, particularly in the context of the residential neighbourhood around it. There was also concerns around the transport connections and links and congestion in the area around the planned site. And they highlighted that it may actually end up having a detrimental impact on activation in this area of the city when it's not being used, and probably wouldn't bring day-to-day activation and life to the central city. And finally, our pause submitters. So it's worth pointing out there wasn't as many of these submitters, but there was a lot of breadth in the things that they talked about in their submissions, and you'll notice that as I go through this. Funding and financial implications, again, as with the stop group, was a big one, and they had concerns about the ongoing costs associated with the arena, both the capital and the operational, and that it would represent a further increase to rates at a time where households are already under significant pressure, and there were fears from some that the cost of living in Christchurch could become unsustainable. Many thought that ongoing demands on ratepayers to fund projects such as this was becoming unreasonable, and the council needs to live within its means as ratepayers are required to. There was a sense that ratepayers have been asked for a significant contribution towards a facility that only a few will see benefits from, and there were concerns that the ongoing operational costs, on top of the increased capital costs, and the long-term impact of debt, particularly on rates. There were some who were worried about the opportunity cost of other projects that we may need to forgo if the arena goes ahead, and some raised concerns that funding the arena would lead to reduced levels of service in other areas and to services that residents value. There was a feeling that Christchurch ratepayers and residents should not be solely responsible for funding the build of the arena, and again, as with the other group, they'd like to see investment from Greater Christchurch or the wider region, and would also like to see contributions considered from certain sporting groups and organisations who would get benefit from the arena. Some supported a user pays approach as well. In terms of benefits and priorities that these submitters talked about, there were some concerns as to whether the city will see enough return on investment to make the project viable, similar to that stop group, particularly in the context of needing to invest up to an additional $150 million in the project. They want us to revisit the investment case and feel that we should be doing our homework and ensuring that there will be enough benefits, both economic and social, return to the city and ratepayers to justify any additional investment. They pointed out that there is mounting evidence that points towards arenas and stadia not being sound economic investments, and that it is common for them to lose money, and suggested that perhaps the level of funding should be revisited and it in some way that is proportional to the benefits that the city is likely to see. They also pointed out that they were concerned that the investment case has not been reviewed in the light of the ongoing costs, and feel that there are other priorities that we would be better to spend that level of money on. Again, primarily back to the basics that I talked about before. There was some sense from some of them that the arena is a luxury item, and there are more pressing issues, needs and challenges that the city is facing, and that investing in that arena would come at the detriment of other projects, activities and services that residents value. There was a lot more feedback from these submitters on the design and design elements, and a desire from some that we should pause and take another look at the overarching purpose of the facility and ensure that we're going to invest in and deliver the facility that the city needs. Again, they felt that there was a need to go back to basics and scale back anything that is a nice to have or non-essential. There were concerns that we were going to end up with a facility that is much bigger than the city really needs, with some noting that they feel it's inappropriate to build an arena of this size for the sake of 1 or 2 events a year. Again, similar to that stock group. They feel in some instances that building a smaller arena is more likely to be regularly at capacity would actually lead to a better atmosphere at events, not just the few big ones that we might get to fill the arena each year. There was questions around the value of a full roof, and they feel that the facility could still be successful without this element. They were concerned about the additional costs associated with it, and others highlighted that a lack of a roof is not a barrier to concerts and other similar facilities and stadia around the country. In terms of the uses, timing and location, they were concerns that by trying to provide a multi-use facility that ticks every box, we may end up with a facility that delivers a mediocre experience across a range of uses, and that perhaps we should focus on building an excellent facility for the needs that we have. There were questions from these submitters about the relationship that the arena would have with our other facilities across the city. Pai and the Town Hall were some common examples, and whether adding another multi-use facility would essentially be robbing Peter to pay Paul. They were concerned that the needs of some groups were being prioritised more than they should be, particularly when they're not planning on making any financial contribution to the development of the arena. And there was a desire again to reevaluate whether now is the right time to be progressing with this project, particularly in the context that I talked about before. There were questions, could we stage the project? And they suggested that we could focus on delivering what the city needs right now, essentially a live sports venue was their feeling, and that aspects such as a roof and or additional seating could be completed in the future. There were some suggestions that we should reconsider the location, and Lancaster Park was floated by some submitters, but others thought that we should continue to utilise the land and in some cases the existing stadium at Addington. They also had concerns around the ground condition of the proposed site and the visual impact that it would have, again, on the residential neighbourhood around it, connections with transport links and potential conflicts with neighbours. And finally, we've popped this one in here because it was a theme that didn't come up in the other groups as much, and that's taking a South Island approach. So they raised that taking a South Island focused approach and building a facility that would complement the stadium in Dunedin. They feel that having 2 facilities of a similar size and functionality in such close proximity will lead to us competing for the same events and put the success of both facilities in jeopardy, and support taking a South Island view and approach when deciding on the size, scale and functionality of the facility in Christchurch.
Great, so these last few slides will just talk you through some subgroup analysis. That's where we identified some key groups and looked at some key themes that came up in the submissions. So the first group, the Greater Christchurch and Canterbury submitters, there was strong support for investing up to an additional 150 million. They share the feeling that we just need to get on with it and that the region deserves this facility. They highlighted that the longer we leave it, the more it will end up costing, and highlighted that it will be an asset not only for the city but for the wider region. Some submitters indicated that they feel it would be appropriate for the wider Canterbury region to contribute to the costs. That was approximately 11%. Around 36% of submitters from Selwyn and Waimak districts who did not signal that they think other areas should contribute actually reported living in Christchurch City. Those who wanted to stop the project tended to feel that we do not need an arena of the size and scale proposed, and that there would be better uses for both the land and the money. There was reluctance from some of these submitters to contribute financially. Submitters who would like us to pause and reevaluate the project provided a range of feedback, which covered topics such as the financial impact and funding options, the type of facility the city and wider region actually needs, and the need to still pay bid fees to secure large events. Generally, these submitters did not support contributions from outside of Christchurch. Another subgroup we looked at were young people aged between, under 25. Generally, young people were supportive of investing up to the additional 150 million. Submitters between the ages of 18 to 24 were the most likely to support investing up to an additional 150 million out of all age groups. The feedback covered a range of opinions and issues and highlighted that we have missed out on experiencing the large events that venues like this bring to a city. They think that it will contribute to the atmosphere of the city, making Christchurch a more vibrant and exciting place to live. And as with other submitters, there was a strong message that we should just get on with it. From those who thought that we should stop the project altogether, they generally felt that the benefits would not outweigh the financial impact. Some signalled that young people will shoulder most of the financial burden from the debt required to fund the build. And the feedback from young people who thought that we should pause and reevaluate tended to focus on the design and design elements, including the roof and capacity. Those who provided feedback on the size and capacity of the arena tended to feel that we should be developing something even bigger than planned to cater for our future population growth. And then finally, our international submitters. So they echoed what we heard from other submitters who support investing up to an additional 150 million so the project can proceed as planned. They questioned why it was taking so long for work to begin on the arena, and some indicated that they moved away from the city because of how long the rebuild was taking. There was a number who mentioned that Christchurch is their home, and they wanted to see the council make bold decisions and have a strong vision for the future of the city. There was a small number that indicated they were looking at returning to Christchurch and that they would like to see the arena proceed. And it was not clear whether the decision on the arena would have any bearing on their decision to move back to Christchurch, but they did agree that the arena was required to make Christchurch an attractive place to live. That is that.
So that's a bit of a roundup of what we heard. There's a lot more detail in the report, but those are some of the key things that came through quite strongly across multiple groups of submitters in a number of cases.
Thank you. Before I go to questions, and we'll have questions and then we'll break for morning tea, but I just wanted to, acknowledge the extraordinary amount of work that you've done in a relatively short space of time. To deal with that number of submissions, to analyse them and to present them in this way is gratefully acknowledged by members of the council, but also, it really is significant. So my first question, I'm not going to direct to you, I'm going to direct to Helen White, our legal counsel, just to be clear. So we've had, over 30,000 submissions. None of us has had time to read them all. I know that many of us have gone through, quite a few of them to pick up the flavour. But most of us have relied on the report. And I just wanted to know from a legal perspective whether we can rely on the analysis of the submissions just to give us the views and preferences of our communities, our diverse communities, as required by the Local Government Act?
Yes, you are. You are entitled to rely on the very thorough report that the specialist team of officers have prepared for you. There is no practicable way you could read all those submissions. That would take you weeks doing nothing else but that. So the Local Government Act does give you discretion in cases like this, where you've got urgency because of the construction market. This is not a statutory consultation. So in my view, the council is more than competent to make a decision today based on the information that is before you and has been available to you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the submissions team? Jimmy Chen.
Okay, only one question, particularly regarding to the consultation the process. But thank you for the comprehensive report. Very good, because if we review demographic, your slides in here, except the New Zealand European, the total population 72%. However, feedback is 88%. Under that, the Maori, Pacific people, Asian, Middle East, and other European, all those percentage of feedback or submitters is less than their percentage population. So how to improve this situation, reflect, whether in the future, not now, whether it's possible, because this time we focus on is kind of repair, whether you agree to increase support or not, whether we can focus on repair household only or not, or census, etc. That's for the future, how to improvement.
So I guess one of the big challenges that we have with consultation, I'm not sure if Katie's in the room, is that we do hear from people who are interested and invested in what we are consulting on, so that you have seen some of that here and you can see that coming through in the demographics. In this case, we do have an overrepresentative sample of New Zealand European submitters, and you can see that the other ethnicities are underrepresented. There's ongoing work to improve this, and it is something that we're aware of and are working to improve, but there's still work to be done. I don't know, Lynn, do you want to add anything?
So, Councillor Chen, I think you've raised a really important point. As you're aware, we identified last year that we were not typically getting a representative sample of the community. We have been working with the Multicultural Committee to improve that. And obviously, this is another example of where we still have some way to go in order to ensure that there's an adequate representation of all groups in our diverse community.
Thank you.
Sarah.
Thanks. Just following on from that, how does this compare to when it comes to demographics, to not just to the population, but to our normal consultations?
So one of the standout ones here is the gender split. Typically, we see an overrepresentative sample of females, and males are generally underrepresented. In this case, we have seen the opposite, which has been interesting. The ethnicities align with what we would typically see, and again, we have that challenge with young people in the city and them engaging. I think what's really important here is actually the sheer volume of people under the age of 24 who submitted. So there's around 1,700 of them, which is more than we typically see, particularly across our survey program.
But percentage-wise, would that be similar to what we would normally get here? So it's just the heightened. Yeah, thanks.
I think the last one was around 4%, so similar.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. Look, thank you very much. And again, much appreciation for the amount of effort. I know it was kind of day and night and over weekends. So, it really is appreciated. It does enable us to make a decision today that you've undertaken all that work. So I hope that you can see that it's been truly valued by your council. So thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you.
And on that note, at 11:25, I will take the morning tea adjournment. And I think I'll just give you 15 minutes because that'll give people time to go and get themselves a cuppa of some sort. So if you'd be back here at 11:40. Thank you. you, everyone. If you could resume your seats, and we have the Te Kaha Project Board in front of us. Barry Bragg, Caroline Harvey-Tier from Venues Otatahi, and we also have David Kennedy, who's the Te Kaha Chief Executive, but there are others in the room who can support this presentation when we get to questions. So thank you. Are you on? Are you online? No, you're on
Online now?
You are now.
I just want to acknowledge we have other Te Kaha Project Delivery Limited board members with us, Jane Hidia and Gil Cox in the audience. Richard Peebles is online. And also, as you mentioned, Mayor, we have Lisa Curran here from Simpson Grierson, answering any matters around the legal assurance. And we also have Peter Neman, who's online, as mentioned before, an advisor to the board, and also has provided the gateway review for Treasury under the funding agreement. Okay, so just want to do, I might have gone the wrong way here. Okay, so the outline of the presentation is a quick recap, really just building on the recap that Mary gave this morning. Also, Carolyn will give a presentation around the developed design, reconciliation to the design fundamentals. Also want to acknowledge, we may mention this later in the presentation, we've had a bit of time to reflect on the community consultation. I think there's a number of comments about the understanding of the project, and we will work forward on consultation and communication with the community to ensure they understand both the design and the contractual arrangements. After that, we'll give a quick summary of the D&C contract and cover off both the price, the program, some of the key terms, and talk through the assurance process we have been through, and also refer to the way forward. If we get a yes, we've got a project delivery organisation in place, and there are certain key fundamentals for the D&C phase, which will be high priority for both the board, the Project Delivery Limited, and VO. And then we'll come to the recommendations. So again, a recap. There were three critical items at the beginning that were very clear to the board when we were appointed in September 2020. This project was a three-way partnership with the Kaha Project Delivery Limited delivering the project in close consultation with Venues Otatahi as the operator. Jointly together, we have verified the scope as we have been working through this process. Second key requirement was regular, ongoing consultation communication with council. And thirdly, there are some key aspects of the D&C contract that needed to be achieved in order to make this recommendation to council. So those fundamentals were Venues Otatahi and Te Kaha Project Delivery Limited were to verify the conceptual design, preliminary design, develop design, make presentations to council on those matters, and those designs were submitted by the contractor against the design fundamentals, and that set the specification in the D&C contract. The contractor was to have sole responsibility for detailed design and construction to deliver the specification. Again, I'm just reminding, these were the expectations set in September 2020. We would have a lump sum contract with the contractor responsible for cost escalations for materials and labour. We would have the contractor responsible for program risk, and there would be very few council retained risks during the D&C stage, and there would be sufficient contingency to take care of those risks should they eventuate. And you wanted the Te Kaha Project Delivery Board to give you confidence that we could deliver the project within the total project budget. So in March 2021, we made a recommendation to the council to appoint B6 WAPAC. There were 3 international consortiums that participated in the market testing process, and the recommendation we made was B6 WAPAC as the head party of consortium, being Fulton Hogan and South Base Construction as part of that consortium. Council approved executing the pre-contract services agreement, which really set in motion this journey around concept design all the way to what we've achieved today. August 2021, we had feedback around the conceptual design and the likely costs of the project. There was a resetting process that took place that began in July and was confirmed in August. That reset the budget and also reconfirmed the design fundamentals at the conceptual design stage. At that time, we flagged the risk around concerns on cost escalation due to COVID, and we've red flagged and we discussed an amount that needed to be acknowledged given that risk. From August 2021 through to May 2022, we went through that design process, so we were back in front of you in January to present the preliminary design, and we advised you at that stage that it was almost certain that we would be using, that we would need to access additional funding, the funding that we had, the amount that we had flagged in August 2021, because of what was occurring in the marketplace around COVID. Obviously, since that time, we had the Ukraine crisis, and we've given you several briefings around that. We got to 27th of May 2022, which was 2 weeks later than the original timeline, where we received the final bid from B6 WAPAC. At that stage, it was non-compliant. And over the last 4 to 5 weeks, we've been working through that with B6 WAPAC. We reached an agreement last Friday, and we now have a D&C contract which is compliant with the strategy that was agreed in 2020. Just hand over to Carolyn to take us through the design reconciliation.
All right, thank you. Good morning. I think we're still good morning. Look, I will do a bit of a presentation further to our presentation last week to reconcile both the investment case design fundamentals as well as the strategic design fundamentals with the current developed design. What we've also done in parallel with reconciling these design fundamentals is also assess the financial model as per the investment case. We won't be deep diving into that today as part of this reconciliation, but we'll certainly take questions obviously further to our discussion last week. Just a couple of things also to note. I think it's really, really important to remember that the purpose of these large community facilities is not only about the economic impact and any commercial return, it is around the social, cultural and economic impact. Large facilities have such a broad range of impact for our communities, and Te Kaha certainly gives us that. And it will be such a place of coming together. And I think it's nice to be able to have the opportunity to talk a little bit about design, because it is obviously the most fundamental part of the decision you have to make, with the exception of the funding associated. So just a bit of a recap on the investment case design fundamentals. So one of the main fundamentals was this was a multi-purpose arena. So not just sporting events, but entertainment events, community events, corporate events, and facilitated for an all-round experience with a covered roof. A rectangle field of play with natural turf. Obviously a little bit of a challenge at times with having a roof and natural turf, but it was certainly an aspiration for this arena, and one that will set this arena apart on a world stage. A minimum of 30,000 seats made up of 25,000 permanent and 5,000 temporary. A northern stage pocket, so keeping that large staging off the field of play to ensure turf health. A minimum of 36,000 capacity in concert mode, so having your GA on the field of play. Acoustic quality, and a level 1 U-shaped concourse, so to give you that ability to walk around the arena. And then to revisit the strategic design fundamentals, the venue needs to be commercially viable. It needs to be able to attract a diverse range of multifaceted events. It needs to consider the future of events and not just be a point in time. And it needs to be able to attract commercial partnerships. It needs to be unique. It needs to be competitive. It needs to be operationally functional. So the underpin of every experience is that you have a simple and easy access to and around the venue, not only for guests, but for clients. It needs a good number of well-appointed amenities, and again, that really smooth ingress and egress. The guest experience. So the design needs to deliver an enhanced guest experience, quality acoustics, industry best practice comfort for seating, sightlines, and it needs to enable the ability to deliver a large, diverse and quality food offering. Accessibility and inclusivity. So the design needs to enable access to the same experience for all members of our community. Again, it needs to be multi-use. The multi-use functionality of the venue will enable the maximising of this opportunity for the region, and it will be a competitive point of difference. And sustainability. Sustainability not only needs to be inherent in the design of the venue, but it needs to enable a sustainable operation. And based on our reconciliation at Develop Design, Te Kaha is meeting not only all of the strategic design fundamentals, as well as those investment case design fundamentals. Economic benefit. So these are of note, these are 2019 numbers and based on the event forecast in the investment case. So over the life of the asset, which is 25 years, and 25 years is the life of the asset, which is a Treasury standard for stadiums, is 462.2 million. Now, some of those highlights, so 3.6 million per annum from large sporting events, 10 million per annum from large concert events, entertainment events, and 5 million per annum from other events. Now, to give you an example of a Forsyth Bar example. So Ed Sheeran played 3 nights in a row at Forsyth Bar. There was a $38 million economic impact for that region over 3 days. Now, 70% of the people that went to that event travelled there, and half of those people were from Canterbury. So it just gives you an example of these numbers are based on a relatively conservative event forecast, but there are points in time like that you can see a real significant and genuine economic impact for the region. In addition, and what wasn't reflected in the investment case, is Venues Otatahi have an in-house catering model, and we source around 85% at the minute of all of our food and beverage from the local region. And when Te Kaha comes online, we expect that to be about another $3.5 million per annum of direct economic benefit to the region. And we'll also look to employ around 600 to 800 casual staff across the venue portfolio. So we'll just walk through some of the venue highlights. You'll see here at the northern end of Te Kaha, the public realm. Now what the public realm enables is a fan zone, so that could be on event day. If you think about things like the Australian Open, the fan zone is actually almost just as big a part of the event. Community events, it's a really welcoming, warm space for things like markets, etc. And really to activate that part of the city outside of event day. I know there's nervousness around that being a relatively heartless building in the centre of the city, but as you'll see from the event forecast, there are around 180 to 229 events per annum, as well as having this wonderful space that can be activated outside of event day. From a commercial perspective, there's the opportunity to have digital billboards in the public realm, and from a competitive advantage perspective, there's a large boneyard in the public realm, which is where promoters can store large concert equipment. Now, a key commercial competitive proposition for arenas is that promoters need to be able to get in and out really quickly. They want to get back on the road, and so the ability to store large kit on site is a real advantage. There's a large urban forest. There's around 220,000 square metres of, I could be wrong on that number, of vegetation across the site. There's also scooter and bike parking to encourage a more sustainable way of transporting to the venue. And the cultural narrative will be reflected in the design in the public realm, as well as the external facade of the venue. And safety is absolutely critical, so SEPTED principles have underpinned the design of the public realm. Accessibility and inclusivity. As we've talked about, the design must enable the same experience for every single member of our community, and Te Kaha certainly delivers that. There are 39 accessible car parks. So from a compliance perspective, based on the number of seats, at the compliance level of car parking for accessible patrons is 2. So you can see it's a far enhanced and a far easier way to get to and stay at the venue. There are 5 accessible routes across the public realm versus the compliance level of 1. And there are 140 accessible seats, which is 40% beyond the minimum required. And the important thing to note around those accessible seats is they are in all areas of the venue, so not just in one part. It is the exact same experience and access to. There are 3 parenting rooms. There are more than double the minimum standard of accessible amenities. 25 accessible all-gender toilets, a changing places toilet, and all F&B counters, so from a guest perspective as well as a staff perspective, are all at accessible height. There are accessible turnstiles in close proximity to lifts. All of the signage is best practice from a blind and low vision perspective, and all of the lifts are within 20 to 30 metres of main entrances. So you can see from where the design is at the moment, it really is enabling that enhanced and same experience for all members of our community. So some highlights around corporate events, which really showcase the versatility of Te Kaha and the ability to attract a diverse and range of corporate experiences. So there's good quality DAS and Wi-Fi. There's a 1,150 square metre corporate lounge, which enables a seated banquet for about 690 and over 1,000 for a standard cocktail dinner or a classroom-style conference type of event. There are 2 satellite kitchens and an operable wall, so you can divide the space, as well as around a 500 square metre terrace out the front, which again is that wonderful, really unique experience and a really competitive proposition for corporate events and something quite different. The ground and level 1 concourse, so there is the ability to hold trade shows and expos. Again, that really connected concourse is a real difference for this venue. And in the level 1 concourse, you can always see the field of play from the concourse, which again is a really special way to continue to experience what's happening out in the bowl. There are corporate suites, 23 corporate suites. So from a corporate event perspective, that's good for breakout spaces or meeting spaces and corporate events, smaller corporate events, as well as offering what it would normally do from a sponsorship and other corporate experience on event day. So entertainment events, you'll see there in the picture an example of what a reduced concert mode could look like. It'd be slightly different, that's an older picture there, but it gives you the experience of the bowl. So the southern end of Te Kaha has a hard section of roof, and it'll have a mother grid and the ability to rig a curtain in behind the stage, which would be the back of the stage on the 22 line. So again, looking back and creating that arena type of experience. From a capacity perspective in that reduced mode, it's around 13,800, which again is that point of difference from the Christchurch Arena, for example, which has a capacity of about 8,888. From a large concert capacity perspective, the capacity at the minute is 36,800. That will always vary slightly, just given stage setups and sight lines, etc. But that's the capacity at the moment in a large concert mode. And in terms of the event forecast, and as per the investment case, we're forecasting 3 large concerts, 4 reduced mode concerts, and a mega event every 6 years. Again, that multi-use is enabled by the roof and the current design. So things like boxing, tennis, esports, nitro circus type of events. And again, what we're seeing in the design is a really unique, competitive venue, one innovative in design, but one that is going to be uniquely local. And it is a really stunning opportunity for our region. Sustainability. So look, the project aims to support measurable action in climate change and will do over its lifespan. Venues Otatahi are working with Toitu around Carbon Mark and Enviromark certification, and this will include Te Kaha, not only now in terms of design, but obviously when it becomes operational. Te Kaha will be an all-electric site, so there won't be any fossil fuels used on site. So that includes all-electric cooking, all-electric forklifts, etc. So again, albeit it has an implication for utilities, there are no fossil fuels on site. There will be solar panels, so the ability to put solar panels on the on parts of the structure to offset some of that utilities cost, and also in a more sustainable way. There'll be high efficiency LED lighting. The F&B strategy will ensure lockdowns, close downs in between events to preserve energy. We will have a target of 80% diversion to landfill rate. That will be a venues all chain operational target. And the waste management strategy will include predominantly compostables for packaging, reusables with some recyclables, and we'll work to shift behaviour to where we can acquire more and more compostable products and try and move toward more compostable and reusable versus recyclable. I've touched on the public realm, so that increased biodiversity with native urban forest, and there's the accurate number of 20,000 square metres of vegetation. I was a little aspirational on the first one. And again, some of those behaviour changes with not having car parking on site, really encouraging walking, encouraging scooter and ride share, etc., to change those behaviours around private car use. Sporting events. So you'll see there an image where the temporary seats are in. So you've got the 5,000 temporary seats at the northern end, in addition to the 25,000 permanent seats around the bowl. Again, the covered arena just enhances the guest experience. And from an acoustic perspective, and we'll touch on it in the guest experience, but it's a challenge to get a balance between what acoustically for a sporting event, you want lively sound, whereas for a more entertainment event, you want more of a muffled sound. But in the design, I think we've achieved, and you'll see comparable to other global arenas, a really good balance between the two. The investment case, an annual All Blacks match in the forecast, 7 Super Rugby, 5 domestic rugby, 1 football, 1 rugby league, and that mega event. So something like a World Cup or a FIFA, etc., from a sporting perspective. And again, that natural turf. So food and beverage. I know that many of you will have enjoyed the experience at the temporary stadium, but the temporary stadium has around 4 food and beverage units, and we add in to meet demand vendors as well. Te Kaha will have 32 food and beverage outlets. So when you think about that from an experience perspective, also your guests want to come a little bit earlier, stay a little bit longer. It really is such an enhanced opportunity to really celebrate local food and beverage at Te Kaha. There are 3 feature bars, obviously that ground floor and level 1 concourse. There's a level 3 premium offering, which is actually what you can see in that picture there, as well as a kids corner, a student wedge, and again, just noting that all of those food and beverage units are at accessible height. That picture there is an example of the level 1 concourse on a event night, concert night. So you see on the right there, that's what we're referring to as one of the super units, so one of the retail units that offers a broad range of food and beverage. And then on the left there, how you can see that view out to the field of play from the concourse. The guest experience, so again, really good quality acoustics have been achieved through a fairly detailed design process and some incredible modelling that's been done by the team. Industry best practice seat size, which is such an important factor for the guest experience, and the majority of the sight lines for all seats are of a premium standard. So C90 is a premium sightline standard, and I think it's around 85% of the seats in Te Kaha are at that level. Again, good Wi-Fi and DAS,
There are 110% of building code amenities, so the last thing anybody wants to be doing is queuing for the toilet when you can be enjoying the event, and so it makes for a far enhanced guest experience. Again, smooth ingress and egress, 3 passenger lifts, 2 escalators, and that covered arena, really fundamental in that protection from the elements. So in terms of commercial opportunities and revenue streams, as I've said before, we have analysed the investment case in the current day, as well as obviously in relation to the developed design. And we're seeing a far enhanced commercial opportunity, so around 50% uplift from what we've seen in the investment case. And that has some benefit, obviously, to offset some of the increased life cycle costs of an increased capital cost. But you'll see there some of the opportunities, some obviously were in the investment case, but some are in addition to. So naming rights, ticketing, porridge, membership sales. There are 88 open corporate reserves. So an open corporate reserve is a collection of 11 seats with its own fridge, so for another premium corporate offering. Digital advertising. So across Te Kaha there are 300 digital screens. Dual level fixed ribbon boards, so on the field of play and at level 1, which is something that no other venue in New Zealand has. The opportunity for future retail tenancies on the ground floor. Again, not only a commercial opportunity, but an opportunity to breathe life and heart day to day at Te Kaha. Opportunities around precinct activation, not only on event day, but outside of event day. Corporate and retail food and beverage, venue hire for all events. And again, just noting this is really such a unique venue, will be really competitive and will attract good sponsorship opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. So moving on to a summary of the D&C contract. Christchurch City Council is the principal to the contract. The Te Kaha Project Delivery Limited support this approach. Council owns the land and will own the asset. Council is the known entity for the contractor to contract with, and the council will need to guarantee the performance of the D&C contract, with delegations to deliver to Te Kaha Project Delivery Limited. That is the simplest and most efficient approach for this contract. And during the pre-contract services agreement, this is the approach we took, so it's proven and it works. The scope is locked in with the approval of the developed design. So the design we've just been through, that will be locked in. It's a lump sum contract, no cost escalations, single point responsibility on the contractor for design and construction. There is a key clause or key clauses in the contract regarding fit for purpose delivery, and the onus is on us as the Project Delivery Limited to hold the contractor to account to deliver the specification that we have agreed and signed up to, and they have agreed and signed up to as part of this contract. The detailed design will be completed by the end of this calendar year, and as principal, we will recommend to you the approval of that. There are very few risks that are sitting outside the contractor's responsibility. And this is because we have been working on this with B6 WAPAC for the last 16 months. And I want to assure you that these expectations, when we went to market, were set and understood by all the parties who participated in the RFP process. That is why we were disappointed on the 27th of May not to have received the compliant bid. But in the passage of additional time, because there's a lot of pressure in the marketplace, we were able to achieve the D&C contract that we set out to achieve at the beginning of this process. There are liquidated damages as council's redress for any program delays, and they are quite comprehensive. The COVID-19 risk for program and cost sit with the contractor. However, in exceptional circumstances for unforeseeable and critical path impacts that cannot be mitigated, and it's a high hurdle to achieve, the contractor can get a program variation, but not a cost increase. So there is plenty of incentive there to keep within the program of April 2026. So our experts, both the experience of the board members and the risk assurance advisor, Peter Nevin, who's online, is that over the 16-month period, we have developed a favourable contract in the current market conditions or current market circumstances. Again, we have Lisa here, we have Peter online to take questions on this at the end of the presentation. The DNC program, we made a recommendation late last year to approve early works. We reconfirmed a certain amount of those early works on the 27th of May. Those groundworks are underway, followed by foundations. Then the sequence, the building sequence will then to erect the bowl, and then throughout that erection of the bowl will be the roof structure. The reason why the program has moved out to the 20th of April 2026 is that B6 Watpac have taken the time to test the market to make sure they've got adequate allowances for COVID and for weather delays, and also to finalise the construction methodology to build this project. And therefore, they now have locked up to that date and they take the program risk. Assurance has been extensive and comprehensive, both throughout the project. So again, the contract form was set when we went to market in November 2020. Those conditions were very clear, and we have been working through that with the contract over that period of time. So this arrangement just didn't occur overnight. Simpson Grierson have been involved right throughout this project through the pre-contract services stage, and were involved with the negotiations with David Kennedy and the team with B6 Watpac over the last few months. Peter Nevin, as I mentioned before, has provided advice to the board throughout this project, and also has provided the gateway review for Treasury. Just want to remind everyone that we meet with Treasury every 2 weeks to keep them updated on the project. ACOM were appointed at the pre-contract services stage and have been involved in price verification and expert review, and also providing recommendations on the contingency. RCP have been involved right from the beginning of the project and involved in most of the big projects in New Zealand, and have provided support and advice to the board on the project management and programming. VO, as I've said earlier, has been an integral part of the team, and in particular working closely with us on design and working closely with B6 Watpac and others to understand the whole of life cost and to be comfortable that the design scope will deliver the operational benefits that we are seeking. If we proceed with the project, Te Kaha Project Delivery Limited have spent an enormous amount of time working on the project delivery team and the structure and the systems and the processes that are required to manage this project going forward. Health and safety, environmental, sustainability, quality assurance, and overall risk management are our highest priorities, amongst other priorities that we are required to deliver under the contract. The total project budget, as we have spent a lot of time talking to you about, that price has been verified by our experts. We are confident as the board and the project team that we can deliver within the total project budget. We've had expert advice on the appropriate contingency sum to manage the few council retained risks during the DNC contract delivery stage. Those contingency sums, based on the recommendation we've made to you, will sit with both the Te Kaha Project Delivery Limited and with council, and the contingency sums are within the total project budget. So the recommendations, in summary, to approve B6 Watpac to carry out this contract, to delegate authority to the Chief Executive at Christchurch City Council to execute a letter of acceptance. Our bid from B6 Watpac expires tomorrow. So we have agreed a letter of acceptance between Council and B6 Watpac if the Council agreed to proceed with the project, and we expect to execute the full contract by mid-August. And as you're aware, the groundworks are underway, so effectively construction is underway. To approve the overall total project cost of $683,165,830, and that includes all of the costs, including the contingencies, as I have just referred to them. Approve the delegations to the board and contingencies as set out in the detailed project costings. They are confidential, and we have shared that information with you. And to acknowledge that under the funding agreement, we have met all the requirements from the Crown. That paperwork has been shared with the Crown, and we expect to receive that confirmation later today. So we have carried out all the requirements under the funding agreement. As I said, we've met with them every 2 weeks. So thank you. That's the conclusion of our presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
This is just for completeness, because I know the answer to this question, but can you explain why the contingencies need to remain undisclosed at this stage?
Well, we don't want to spend them for a start. They are amounts that have been provided as expert advice only to Council. There's an enormous amount of detail sitting behind those numbers, and they are confidential to us. And we don't want to disclose to anyone what those numbers are, because we don't want to spend them.
Yeah, and the other issue might be the nature of the decision that we made today. If we were back in the market, it's not something that you'd want to be in the public arena.
That's right. So if the decision was pause and we decided to go down another track, then all this information are confidential to the parties, because we'd be back out on the market, dare I say it, going through this whole process again.
Yeah, and I guess the reassurance that you're able to give us, though, is that the contingency that has been set aside, you've got a high level of confidence in that as a board.
So the risk management process associated with this project began 16 months ago. So we've held extensive risk workshops right throughout the concept design, prelim design, develop design phases, and they have been reported every month to the board, and we have a detailed information sitting behind these numbers with expert advice, so the board is comfortable to recommend the contingencies.
Thank you. And I guess my last question is around, the nature of a fixed price contract in the present market. One, congratulations. But two, perhaps could we get some commentary from the independent assurance expert who you've, identified today also holds the Gateway Review process very close on behalf of Treasury as well?
Yeah, I'll just make one comment and I'll hand over to Peter. Again, this is something that we've worked through over the 16-month term of the project. It was very clear right from the outset that this is what our expectation was. We understand why B6 Watpac were having difficulty locking up to that because of the change in market circumstances, but the additional time gave them the time they needed to lock up to that requirement. But Peter, are you online?
Peter's not online.
Oh, he's not online
Oh.
just yet.
Oh, right. Can we?
He's been contacted.
He's not available just yet.
Well, can we come back to that?
Yeah,
we'll try and
come back
contact
to
him.
it.
We'll come
I've
back
got
to that.
Sam McDonald.
Yeah, thank you, Barry and team, for that really comprehensive report. Just two from me, and they probably are, apologies, they may be stupid, but they're more for the public benefit going forward. The first one is around, so obviously, again, like Leanne, the fixed price is really, really good. But in terms of the risk sitting with us as principal, or I guess as you as our agent, can you just talk through what you can in the public domain as to what risks, except for COVID, sit with us? Because I think there's been a lot of public commentary about a fixed price being quite challenging.
Yeah.
And can you just walk us through that?
Okay, so to be absolutely clear, any escalations associated with labour, costs, or materials, or quantities are all sitting with the contractor. We've been through this process over a long period of time, and the risk workshops have helped inform that. So there's a quantitative risk assessment that's taking place during the risk management workshops so that all parties understand where the risks sit between the parties. one of the strategies we brought to the council late last year was a commitment to early works. So it gave B6 WAPAC 2 opportunities to get out and test the market early, to be able to be in this position, but also it allowed us to get underway with some of those ground improvement works. So all our understanding of the ground conditions at this point in time, that risk now sits with B6 WAPAC. There still are some unknowns, so we haven't completed the full archaeological search of the site. So we've made allowance in our contingency for some of those risks.
So just in a practical sense, if you were to list the 3 key risks, or the however many there might be, and that sit with us as the principal, what are they in a practical sense?
In a practical sense, there's some ground condition risks that sit with us that are not known at this point in time. So we know that the risks are there, but they haven't been realised and may never be realised. Secondly, because there are enormous amount of paperwork sitting behind this with drawings and specifications, there could be something that we have missed during the confirmation of the developed design scope. So we've allowed some contingency for that. And dare I say, the last one, which I hate to point to, but in the current market, there's a lot of litigation risk associated with construction contracts. And that part of that contingency that we've got there is in the event we get some litigation. Don't want to say this to B6 WAPAC, but look, the developed design contract and the way we have negotiated the contract and the contract terms that are in there, the advice that we have received is there's very little risk sitting on the principal side because of the early contractor involvement that we've had. But we are in a challenging construction market, right? And when the contractors get under pressure, there is litigation risk. We've been through a careful selection process to select B6 WAPAC, and we have done back in 2021 when they were selected, extensive investigations around them and their approach to dealing with the principal. So we hope through this partnership approach that we've taken, well, not hope, we believe through the partnership approach that we have taken, we have mitigated that. But